evening, guys. Thanks for joining us. This is our second one for the week, which is the first or second or third. Actually, this is our third one for the week. We've done episode 3, 4, and 5 now in a row. It's been great to see the response from everybody. We had a really good night last night with Adrian. Got some really good feedback. People really enjoyed the talk. We're going to get into some of those other issues or scenarios soon as well. So I'm just going to go and explain where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing tonight. Tonight, I said, like we said last night, I'm going to be talking to Mr. Anton van Wyk. I owe him a big bag of biltong last night. I called him Anton van Sale. Unfortunately, Freudian slip. And then we spoke last night. We've been watching what people have been saying and doing. Everybody and his dog is streaming live, whether it's from his rooftop or the guitar and all that. And some of it's really cool, really funny. But some people are doing some really excellent work out there, especially now that you can't just go to the shops and buy what you want, and people are working from weird positions and places. But there are, every now and again, we see a little bit of an obvious do and don't. I've had a lot of questions, especially on the audio side, in terms of how to approach it slightly different. What are the things to look out for? So it's just a matter of being aware and, keeping your finger on the pulse of what can and can't be done, and working within those boundaries. So I've got Anton here. I'm going to switch over to another view, and you can see him. There we go. Hello, Anton.
How are you guys doing?
There we go. So I think his level is enough. I'll match him out when he's talking to me just now. So what we're going to do tonight, I'm going to talk into some audio stuff, but I'm going to get Anton to just, or Anton to kick it off with a bit of technical insights. And me and him chatted a little bit, but I'm going to let him share, and then I'll bounce in and out as we go along. So over to you.
Thank you, Christo. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the Facebook people. I see there's a lot of people online. I just want to welcome everyone that's online. I'm watching it here on my right-hand side. And the last couple of weeks with this lockdown, there's a lot of people, like Christo earlier said, is doing their own little streams, their own little videos, and some of them are funny, and some of them actually is not so funny and not so great. Especially when you're a sound engineer and you listen critically when you listen to an audio feed or a recording or something like that. And I'm not going to mention a couple of names, but you get people playing on a guitar. It sounds lovely. Then the vocals comes in. It sounds like somebody switched on a blender, and you cannot hear what they're saying. The vocals are mixed up. The guitars are mixed up. Then they stop singing, and then the guitars are clear again. You can hear the compression from the actual phone comes off again. And it's very interesting how people do things. You actually, like Krista said, see a lot of people out there that's doing very nice productions. The light is right, the sound is right, everything else, the room acoustics is right. And I do take my hat off, because you can't run to the shops these days, and they make do with what they have at home. And past that, I had a lot of churches contact me in the background and saying, listen, guys, how do I get my mix better? Because we haven't done any live streaming before. Right now with this lockdown, I have to do a live stream. And the question I've asked them is, what equipment do you have? And the equipment they have right now is critical, because if you don't have the right equipment right at your church right now, or where they're streaming from, the question is, how are you going to convert it? You can't go shop right now. So people are getting innovative out there, and they actually use their phones. And you pick up a lot of the room, and you actually get the pastor preaching, you get somebody coughing in the back end, and the person holding the phone is whispering to his friends next to him, and you hear him whispering louder than the pastor is preaching. So I've seen all of these running around Facebook the last couple of days and weeks, and there was actually some nice questions that came in this last night from one or two people, and we're going to delve straight into one or two questions, Christo, if you are right with that. So let's start with one of the questions, and we actually can flesh it out from there if you want to.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so first question, a bit of a legal question. Can Anton explain the copyright infringement when playing pre-service music on live streams and Facebook, and when Facebook and YouTube cuts you and blocks your feed out and blocks the audio? And is there a way to still play the music without being cut? So unfortunately, law is law, copyright is copyright. And there is something called the CCLI, where you can go and buy a license. And you take that license, you buy it for your church. It applies to the church, to the music you're singing, to the lyrics, to pre-streaming, post-streaming. But ultimately, where the buck stops is with YouTube, and the buck stops with Facebook, because they trump all the rules out there. YouTube's got something written in the algorithms, same as Facebook, but Facebook is not as good as YouTube algorithms, where YouTube actually listens to the song. It listens to the lyrics. It listens to the actual rhythm, the tune, the melody. And if you're trying to play the song differently, even if you do a cover of it and you play the melody of the song slightly different than the original, YouTube will still pick up the words. It will still recognize the words, and by that, it will immediately block it. It will cut it, and it will stop the audio feed there immediately, because there is a massive agreement that was written between YouTube and Facebook and the CCLI and the biggest artists out there. And the artists sometimes can do two things or three things. Firstly, they can block the audio, like most of us experience. Or what they can do is actually put ads in between your music and your songs and get money from that and get a revenue from that. Or they can totally hijack that stream and cut your entire stream, not just the audio. So unfortunately, you can be covered by the correct way, the correct path, following all the legal routes with the CCLI. But unfortunately, YouTube and Facebook is going to trump and kill you there right on the spot. So another question, this one is for you, Christo.
I got the audio one.
Yes.
So I'm just going to read it quickly. Oh, by the way, these questions came from Poncho. He sent them last night after we made the announcement. I'm going to make myself a bit bigger. How do you... on how we can improve on the mixes. So pretty much talking about configuring and approaching the music mix. Obviously, mixing in an auditorium, when you're mixing front of house, you can record. And I think most sound guys have done this. You have a Sunday morning service and you mix it and it sounds amazing. You think you've never heard the band sound like this, and you recorded it and you're like all excited. And you grab a copy of that recording, you stick it on your car and you start driving home, or even when you get home and you listen to it and you think, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? It's horrible. And it's not horrible in the sense where you were mixing it front of house, you've got the acoustic drum kit, you've got the people singing along, the environment of the venue that you're in, and the mix is in that context. So I had a conversation with Estienne from Mosaic about this the other day, and I'm going to pick on him because he's got big shoulders. And I mean, they were capturing and recording some live stream stuff just before the lockdown as well in the empty auditorium. And he went to front of house and he put up some nice near field monitors in front of house, some stereo monitors. And he had his whole mix there, which is what they would use on a Sunday. But the band's on stage in front of him, and he had the PA off, and he's only mixing on the near fields. And he ends up, and I spoke to him about this afterwards, and his mix wasn't horrible. There was nothing really wrong with it, in a sense where if you want to listen to it afterwards and you're sitting in a controlled environment, maybe a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you can, nothing's ever perfect, but it's things that he was that he thought he'd done in the room. But in the room, there's still a live drum kit. There's still people on stage. The environment that you're standing in is so much different. So you need to try and get into the same environment as what your audience is. And in this case, people are on laptops. They're on cell phones. They're on earpieces. They're on some of smart TVs and all that. But it's all hi-fi orientated, end-user market orientated stuff. So you pretty much what you end up doing is you've got to try and do what other people get paid a lot of money for, which is mastering. And mastering is not something in live music that happens just by accident. There was a question last night, or sometime on one of the streams I did about, do you always have to master on your final output in Pro Tools? You know, can't you just get your mix right? I said, well, you can get your mix right, but you've got to think of your deliverable. If you're mixing for an album, if you're mixing for radio play, if you're mixing for streaming, if you're mixing for LPs, for records, you know, everything has different dynamic range and different deliverables, and there's specs on all of this stuff, which we'll find and we'll set on our we'll stick on our Facebook page. You know, different outcomes. But what it comes down to is the more you can put yourself in the right environment. So, which in other words, if you're mixing for a stream specifically and music is important for your church, ideally you should have a broadcast mix facility. So a room, basically a studio, where that engineer hears the reference mix and that's all he hears. He's isolated from what's happening in the room so that he's not contradicted by that. And it's essentially a studio. It's different to a studio mix in the sense that your mics are all live, so there's a lot of spill, so a lot of control, a lot of the principles from mixing live still comes into play. There's no pause, stop button and rewind button, so you've got to be ready. I spoke the other night about in your workflows being ready to be responsive instead of reactive. And if you're doing broadcast, this becomes even more pronounced because everybody's sitting at home, they're seeing a picture and they're listening to sound. And in this case, like you can see, this picture is flashing of Anton. We've got a bit of a technical thing here, which we think we got our finger on, but we just got to sort that out. We saw it last night as well. And in my case, if I had to explain to you all the technical things that I'm doing here to get the stream working, I'm sitting in my old garage. You know, it's not an ideal scenario. We're all in this space. But if my audio is breaking up, that will deter people from watching a lot quicker. So the audio's got to be right, because you can look away from the camera now and be distracted by your phone or saying like, Alison, just listen to me in the background and still get what I'm trying to say. And church services and music is very much the same. So being able to listen in that sense, and if you're now in a situation where you're not in a studio, you are at home, you know, making sure, and I asked Anton to do something on purpose, which he's going to fix for us just now. He's been talking onto his laptop microphone, so he's standing with ambient, and he's going to, while he's talking just now, he's going to plug in his headset, which is a typical little white. I'm showing these tonight. Normally they're hidden away because I'm listening on here, so that my speakers are quiet, so my room is quiet, so that I'm more defined. I'm talking on a C1000 that's facing me quite directly. So if I do this, you can hear my sound is a bit blocked, and if I do that, it's clear again. So if I was, for example, reading out of a book and I was doing this, I would be affecting the sound quite drastically. So those little tips and tricks that you can try. But from a music perspective, one of the biggest mistakes the live guys are making. So if you've been mixing at your church and now you're sitting in a scenario where you've got to do a stream mix, the most common and the easiest thing to fix, which is the hardest things to fix, is the level that you're listening at. So if you think about it at home, 2% of the people are cranking up that volume. You know, the rest of them are listening to what they're listening to a normal TV program. So they don't want to be changing all their volume. So if you're cranking your volume in a studio, and if you have these speakers bouncing on the table and you're pumping it and it sounds amazing, the dynamics that are coming out of your system is different to what everybody else is going to hear. And you're creating a vibe here because of the volume. If you're mixing at a low 82, 83, 84 dB SPL, to get definition on bass, to get vocals to sit properly, to get your reverb to sit properly, is a completely different challenge from a mix engineer's perspective. And it's very possible. I mean, that's what guys are doing in studio all the time. But a live guy struggles because I'm not feeling the energy, you know. So it's a bit of a mindset change that you've got to go through, and just approach it slightly different. And it is something, but it's a mental shift that you've got to make. And the first thing, the easiest way to get into that mindset is to take music that you know, if there's a genre or gospel music or an artist or the kind of music that your church plays or the music that you're trying to stream, play that music at a level which is comfortable for 2, 3, 4 hours, you know, and you're going to be doing other stuff, stop, start. You don't want to fatigue your ears too much, but do it a couple of times during the day. And then when you start mixing, don't change the volume of your listening environment. So you're mixing into that same listening environment, which makes it, you're going to have to pay a lot more attention to your dynamic elements within your mix. You're going to immediately see that you're going to try and push that kick drum because you're trying to get some feel out of it, and then you're going to realize it's not the kick drums sitting in the mix is not a volume thing; it's a dynamic range thing. So using your dynamic range tools, compressors, things like that to to reduce its dynamic range so that you can bring it up to the mix so gets a nice sweet spot. Same thing with bass, vocals and the reverb around vocals, getting separation done, and cleaning up, especially with live sources. Clean up. I mean, doing a live mix, it's all about doing laundry first. Get rid of all the dirt. So the more dirt you get rid of, the cleaner everything is. And it sounds like a silly example, but that's literally what it comes down to. If I take every source and I have the source only contribute to the mix what it's there to contribute, the outcome almost starts taking shape before you start mixing, as opposed to if you're trying to get your vocals to come out and you just push all the faders up, you start working on the vocals, or you even worse, you solo the vocals, you get a perfect vocal sound, then you unsolo it and you try and bring it in the mix and you just want to give up because you did it out of context. With a live mix, you've got to work in context as much as you can. So cleaning up, high pass filters, low pass filters, dynamic control, these are all keys that you can, if you implement these kind of things, your gain structure, filters, and dynamic control, way before you start EQing and all that kind of stuff, you'll be 85-90% of the way there. And then you start doing the creative stuff in terms of your EQing and other kind of stuff, and you'll get a mix quite quickly. But I think the biggest thing is paying attention to what is the outcome that I'm working towards. And don't be scared to take criticism and listen and ask questions and try other stuff. You can't no one's doing the same thing every day that they've been doing the last 10 years, hopefully. Otherwise, because that means you're not developing yourself. So pay attention. I want to do a whole section on this and take it from start to finish in terms of just how do you start building your mix. And then also what the different outcomes is. Like I said, we're going to put it in the page. I'm going to bring a friend of mine. I haven't told him yet. I'm going to try and see if I can get Tina Smith online, who's a post-broadcast engineer specialist, especially when it comes to loudness ratings for live broadcast and all that. And he understands and can talk into some of the technical stuff quite nicely. But it is something that is as daunting as it sounds. The simpler you keep it, the better. Don't try and you must remember if you watch your levels and you get a decent dynamic range for these kind of for Facebook and these things, you're talking about a dynamic range in your total mix of about no more than 5 dB between the loudest and the softest. Because if you do that and you transition from music to voice and you've kept that dynamic range, people don't find that the music was cool and when the guy started talking I had to turn my volume up. So if you were listening at a loud volume with the band, then the band relaxes and the speaking starts and you're still mixing, you can have a 12 dB drop in your monitoring here and you don't realize that it's too soft because you started out too loud. But the person at home, the pastor's voice disappears completely. If you start at a decent volume and you manage your band, when the pastor comes in or the MC comes in and that mic takes over, you're at the same plane. And that's the ideal thing. I mean, if we all know there's certain TV channels, when you change to those channels, the first thing you grab is volume. And you're watching your favorite movie and there's an ad break and the ad break comes and you can't grab the volume quick enough because the ads are exploding your house. You turn the volume down and then they come back to the movie and like, huh, where is it now? And that's just bad technical setup on some of those channels that they don't pay attention to the continuity of their loudness. I mean, some of your main broadcasters have got ALCs, automatic level controllers, that look ahead, that manages the expectation so that if you set your volume at a certain level at home, it sort of stays there. And if you think about it, if I'm sitting on Facebook, if I'm scrolling YouTube and I'm listening on headphones, it's the same thing. You don't want to be turning your level up and down. Most of the good posts, posts that really bug you and jump out at you, someone that's just grabbed it and filmed a car crash and people screaming and all that, you expect those to be, but if you're going from music video to music video to music video to a stream site, you want to be try and be consistent. So that's a short answer. I hope it made sense. I haven't looked at any queries. If there are some, I'll try and answer them. The next question is back to Anton.
All right, so let's go back to the microphone thing quickly that you spoke about earlier. So right now, I'm just speaking through my laptop microphones.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So right now, I've got my little Apple headphone adapter jack here. So while I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to connect that up. While I'm talking to you, check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's switched over. you can actually hear the audio quality improve on that side. You can actually hear the room noise on the back end goes quiet as well. Because
so let me just explain that quickly. The room noise goes quiet because of the proximity effect. He's using an iPod or a telephone headphone, so the algorithm in there is focused on voice. So you can hear his voice. I mean, I'm talking about now to have him quiet, because when you heard the transition, he went honky quite quickly, because he went from, and that honkiness wasn't his voice. The room is ambient and there's low-end energy sitting there. And the minute that went away, what's accentuated is everything that's left over, which is his voice. So if he speaks now,
check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
He sounds better, but it's quiet. You don't hear the room. The microphone is closer. It doesn't always, you think, well, it doesn't look professional. I've got a thing hanging off my ear. But that little volume control there is the mic. And the closer you can get any mic to the source, if that's all you have, I'm not talking about doing this and blowing into it, but get it closer to the source. Then if there is a bit of noise or dogs barking or anything like that, the algorithms within the streaming software, which actually can manage background noise, can work better, because there's more of a distinction between source and noise. So, yeah.
Just to add on to that as well, like I said early on, watching a lot of artists now on Facebook playing the guitar and singing at the same time, is they put a cell phone in front of them and they start playing. And the problem with that is that if you think about where the guitar is, where the mouth is, and where the cell phone is, where the actual microphone sits, the distance from the guitar to the microphone is the closest. So you hear more guitar than vocals. But if you do the little headpiece or headset that I've got here, this is an omnidirectional microphone, which means it picks up everything around me. My mouth is the closest, which means if I play a guitar, which is lower down to my belly side, that's going to be further away, which means the actual mix between the vocal and the guitar will be the right volume. And that's what people need to understand, that even though this looks ugly, it actually is a better option than putting the actual cell phone in front of you and using that as a microphone or pickup. Now, the one thing that people just need to take cognizance of is the actual microphone. So what people do with long hair is the microphone goes into the hair, and all you hear is this hustling sound because the microphone is scratching against the hair. Or like the other night, I saw somebody wearing a jacket with a zipper, and this microphone kept on scratching against the zipper and make the whole sound in the back end. So even though it's a great tool and it sounds better and works better, people just need to check out the placement, or maybe take a little bobby pin and just pin it so it can't reach just anywhere. So make sure there's a nice loop and everything else. So these are the things we can actually do to make us sound better and let the people enjoy it on the other side. So the third question that came in. At my church, I've realized that when the pastor moves, there are horizontal lines on the stream, as if the image becomes distorted in a way. What causes that, and how can that be eliminated? He uses software called OBS. Now, that's a fairly simple answer. So in video, you get progressive and interlaced. Progressive meaning that when you see a picture, like you look at the screen on your laptop right now, every single line is drawn, line 1, line 2, line 3, all the way down to the bottom. When it gets to the bottom, it starts at line 1 and draws it again. Interlace means you draw line 1, line 3, line 5, line 7. When it reaches the bottom, comes back and then draws the same picture, line 2, line 4, line 6, and line 8. Now, the problem comes in where your software is set to be progressive and your camera is interlaced. Now, what happens is your camera is picking up the pastor. The image it creates is actually missing lines. So when the pastor starts moving, the camera is still picking up lines, but your screen is drawing new lines and it has to fill in the gaps. So just go and check in your OBS software, of your camera software, and make sure that everything is either set to interlaced or progressive. And that will fix the problem for you. That's quite an easy fix for us.
Cool. There was one more question there, which was good. Well, all the questions are good. Sorry. I think this is just a nice technical one, just running on HDMI cables, longer than 20 meters. Is it better to run Cat5 to extend your HDMI or your STIs than running long copper cables?
It's application driven. So once again, the question is, what do you want to achieve? Because with normal HDMI, you can go 10 meters, some cables, which is the flat HDMI, you can go up to 15, 20 meters, depending on what cable and what brand you've got and what resolution you want to push through that. You can extend that with HE-T extenders with Cat5 cable in between. But the problem with that is you can go up to 100 meters. And then you actually reach the limit of the Cat5 extender. Where with SDI, you can go up to 300 meters, depending on what you want to do and how you want to do it and everything else. Pushing the limits, yes, you can go Cat5. But the question is, are you only sending video and audio down that line? Or do you want to do control as well? Because if you send HDMI over HD-T transmitter receiver pairs, you can actually send over that same transmitter pair a LAN connection, 100 meg LAN connection, which means you can have a LAN connection or network connection on your side, extend it over the CAT cable all the way to the far side where your camera is or your screen is, and actually have LAN points there immediately. You can have an RS-232.
Would that be to do telemetry control, that kind of stuff?
Yes. So if you've got a pan-tilt zoom, a PTZ camera, and you want to feed that into a LAN connection, and the camera is LAN controlled, which means is over the network, you control the camera left, right, up, down, zoom in, zoom out, or set the aperture of the camera, the iris open or close. You can connect that into the camera with the HDMI. Both signals get converted to the Cat5, and on your side, when it splits out, HDMI goes into your little mixer, your little Cat5 network connection goes into your camera controller, and then remotely control what you need to control. Same goes with 232 or IR if you've got a TV on the other side or a plasma screen where you want to switch the screen on and off or change sources or change volume. That also get transmitted over that CAT extender. Where with SDI, you cannot do that. SDI only carries the video and the audio signal. So it's all depending on what you want to achieve, where you want to, what's your end goal. That's the question. And most of the cameras these days, if you look at them, the professional cameras only got SDI because you need an operator behind it. Most of the pan-tilt zoom cameras that you get out there these days, at the back of it, you've got your LAN connection that can give you my tongue is twisting. Wow, it's too late at night. 264 or 265 encoding or decoding on that. You get your USB connection on, you get HDMI connection on, and you get an SDI connection on it. So you get all four connections on one pan-tilt zoom camera. Now that's very helpful when it comes to a church with only one person doing the video. You do not have enough volunteers to sit behind a camera and actually with a tripod and follow the pastor or do special shots or have the facility for people walking around with wireless cameras. Wireless equipment is very expensive. So if you mount pan-tilt zoom cameras throughout your venue, you have a person behind a controller, you can actually control those cameras, do your own custom shots, and then don't have people walking around.
If I remember correctly, you can actually preset a whole bunch of shots. So it's not about moving the camera every time. It's just pressing 1, 2, 3, 4, and it goes to specific positions.
Correct. Some of those cameras can have presets up to 255 presets on a pan-tilt zoom camera. And that means from zoom in, zoom out, your aperture, making it smaller or bigger, color corrections inside of it. So every preset recalls something else. So if you know there's a certain scene where the house lights is on and the pastor's preaching, your camera aperture has to be focused on the people, get the faces. But when worship is on, when they dim the lights, your aperture will change, your color correction will change, your color warmth will change. So all those presets are there and can be changed. And that's where the HD-T is beneficial over SDI.
So I have a question. Everything you just said is obviously, the ideal, everybody would want 20 of these cameras and all these kinds of things. But the question always comes down to everything you're talking, that's like millions of rands of solution. Or is that not the case? Are there these kind of solutions at different price brackets?
So on the pan-tilt zoom cameras, in the past they used to be very expensive, but the price point of these cameras dropped dramatically in the last couple of years because of the demand for it, and a lot of people doing home broadcasting with USB connections, and even in boardrooms. So the same cameras get used in boardrooms. So if you want to have a startup system, what I've got at my church right now, I've got basically two cameras. I've got a camera which I call a safe shot or wide shot that got the entire stage or the front of the church. And then I've got another camera with presets that I can preset and zoom in, zoom out, or have podium shots or audience shots or something like that. So starting off a system with two cameras, pan tilt zoom, is very cost effective. It's not that costly.
And it can be modular. I mean, you can grow on it.
Correct. So you can start it with one camera, go to two cameras, ultimately up to 200, 255 cameras if you really want to on a single system. But what I also have is I've got a little Canon XA35 with an SDI output, and I use that as my follow camera. So I've got a little Blackmagic system, SDI out of that, straight into my Blackmagic. I've got my little pan tilt zoom cameras, two of them, and they'll go HDMI back into my Blackmagic. Everything's set to 720, 50 frames a second, and everything syncs up. And the nice thing about the new pan tilt zoom cameras that's beneficial, that wasn't there before, is the actual color warmth, that you can set the color warmth, the iris, the aperture open and close. That's important because in the past, they relied on autofocus, auto setup, and sometimes when people with a person with a white shirt walks past, the aperture will close because it's a lot of light and everything goes black and the person goes past and the aperture opens up again. So there are benefits. So back to the question about the SDI or the HDMI, HDBaseT extenders, goes back to application. Obviously, the HDBaseT is more expensive because you have to have transmitters, receivers, CAT cable in between, where with the SDI, it's a single cable, BNC connectors, and it's done.
Okay. Yeah, big mouthful. And I think one thing we'll do, if you don't mind, we'll put it in the chat here, and we'll put it on our Facebook page as your contact detail. I'm sure that with your days being as busy as they are, cutting lawn and mowing trees, you can answer some queries and questions like that. So we'll put your information up there.
No problem.
And then people can ask. And then even now, I mean, if there's some questions that want to come through now, I asked Tino to rephrase a question because I got confused when I read it. I just think I'm reading it wrong. He's asking, which output channels can we use to get the best live stream output? I think anything that sounds as close to what you hear on headphones without solo buttons and as long as your mix is balanced. So what I think you're saying is, coming out of a console, obviously your left-right output, if you're in a room or in a church already, you've got processing on that. I'm always of the opinion, and I teach this to all my students, your left-right on your console shouldn't have plugins on it in a live environment. Your left-right becomes a source to multiple platforms. So on a desk where you've got matrices, matrix 1 and 2 is your PA, matrix 3 and 4 is your recording, matrix 5 and 6 is your mother's room, and even if it's in a theater, your main PA, front of a house PA, all that, your left-right is a source so that when you want to record your left-right, it's a true representation of what you've done through the desk. And on your matrix, you've got voicing and EQing and stuff happening, which tunes your room for you. And on your recording mix, you've got mastering happening. And on your foyer mix, you've got alternative inputs for announcements and all these kinds of stuff. So I would say, obviously, your left-right should be the source for everything, and then everything gets its own compartmental processing on it, which really helps a lot. And again, you're responding, you're not reacting, you're making sure that you're ready for different circumstances. And if a guy walks up and says, listen, I'm from a newspaper, I need a feed, you plug him in, you send him a matrix. You don't have to change anything. If he says it's too loud or too soft, you don't have to change your master. You change the matrix that you're sending him. If you run out of matrix, you use an auxiliary. Use something else other than your master. Your master is a source. It's not part of your mixing tool. It's the source out of your console. So I hope that answers Tino's question.
Just on that, Christo, one thing that I've seen quite a lot, what people do is they stay inside the room, they do a nice mix. They actually compensate for the room because the room acoustics is bad. So they mix for the room. You listen on the headphones, it sounds okay. And when you listen to it on the live stream, you hear no kick, you hear no bass. Because if you stand inside the room and you listen on your headphones, you hear and you feel the bass coming and inside the room.
Yeah.
In your headphones, you don't hear it. So you do not know that you have to compensate for that mix for the live feed. And that's one thing that I've seen quite a lot. And this comes back to the question and the discussion Christo had earlier on about maybe having a separate room for mixing. If you stand inside the actual front of house position and you're trying to mix from there with headphones on, 90% of the time you'll get an okay mix, but you will have a problem with certain elements.
So let me just throw this into the mix. We're not saying that you can never get a good mix at front of house. And I think that's what he just said as well. Obviously, in an ideal environment, the PA these days, and most new PAs that go in, get voiced and installed into a room, and they get adapted to the room to deal with notes, to deal with standing waves, all these different things. So that the PA is what we call flat. In other words, whatever I do on the desk is being represented through the PA. So if I do a 2 dB notch on any one of my EQs, I'm hearing a 2 dB notch. There's nothing worse than standing behind a desk and you turn, and then you hear something. That just means, people want to blame the desk or something. It just means your PA, there's so much noise that it's having to fight through, inefficiency in your system. It's one of the first signs of a system getting old. When a PA has been in a church or been in any venue for 5, 6, 7 years, they've not blown anything, but you're exaggerating frequencies because the efficiency level of your performance of the components are going down within the system. If you look on JBL's website, talking about JBL because Wild Marr here, they recommend on a touring system and on an installed system for every one of their brand ranges, they've got a recommendation of a time period after 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, depending on where you're at, of replacing components. In other words, the drivers in your system, not because they're blown, but to maintain the high-end efficiency. Now, that's an expensive exercise if you're running like a massive VTX system. But if you're running at a high level, it is worthwhile to do that. And if you're in a church after 5 years, your SRXs or something that's in there, there will be an audible difference between a new box and your box. Not because it's gotten blown. It's fatigue, it's mechanical fatigue and stuff that happens. And that's life. You're not going to stop that. If you're on the coast and there's humidity, and if you're up in Joburg and there's rats, and there's just so many different things that can happen. So maintenance is important. Cleaning stuff is important. You can obviously prolong the life of any piece of equipment just by maintaining it and keeping it clean. But having said that, the reason I'm saying that is, if you take the whole thing in context, if you're sitting in a church, for example, like Esther, I'll pick on Estienne again at Mosaic. That system's been tuned for that room. They've got a J series system in there. They've got SD5s at front of house. They spend a lot of time on the PA. That's why I said his mix is pretty much there, because what he's hearing off the PA translates well onto his mix. It's there. The one thing that you cannot EQ out of the PA is the acoustic sound that hits you. And when the room's empty, you'll probably find that on a Sunday, you get a better balance of your music than what you do than what the room is empty. Because when the room's empty, you're hearing all that reflection off the stage and the natural sounds, and you're compensating. On a Sunday, when the people are singing along, there's the ambient noise in the room's up, there's a masking effect, and you almost only hear the band out of the PA because of that ambient noise being louder. So, there's no right or wrong. It's understanding the context and just taking everything. And if you take every element and focus on every element within the chain, you'll find that your end result gets better without you trying to make it better. In other words, if you're struggling with feedback, it's not an EQ problem. There's other things that contribute to that, from mic position, mic choice, and even microphone. With Pastor Ray McCauley at Raymer, we try and replace the headset there maybe twice a year. I think we've got it on a 6-month basis. And there's nothing wrong with it. We take it out of rotation. We use it for weddings. We use it in other places. But we want to maintain the quality of the sound, because with sweat and just the microphone, put a new one in, we go back to the EQ we saved 6 months ago. And after 3-4 months, you can see us trying to boost a little bit of high end, the monitor level's not so loud anymore, all that kind of. And the only thing that's changed is the age of the mic and the sweat, humidity, all that kind of stuff that happens. So, and that you'll have that with every mic. But what the benefit is, the little headset mics, when you use them in children's church and weddings and funerals and all those kind of things, they tend to break because people don't know how to they mangle them and break them. So we've got a good healthy chain of microphones going around. And also having a backup microphone But it's little things like that, and like I said, tuning your PA properly, paying attention to your mix, to have that responsive instead of reactive role going, so that you know what's happening in your mix. So when you hear things, you can respond and deal with situations quicker. And then just prepare yourself. And one of the ways you prepare yourself is keep yourself learning. Keep reading, listening, looking, asking. Keep developing yourself. We're never too old to learn. I'm learning every day. There was a question here from Paul Smith. What's my opinion on the USB mixers these days? I'm assuming you're talking about like a little SI Impact or a Presonus or a M32 or one of those. Those mixers are all pretty good. The ATD conversion is already happening on the preamp stage. By the time we're going into the adapter into a USB bus, it's not reintroducing any new artifacts because the digital path has already been set. So your DAW component of that is actually a massive feature. I mean, a lot of people can do some really nice virtual sound checks and really rework their stuff and get some new content down. So it comes back, all of that, it's not the USB that's the issue, it's how did you capture, what was your gain structure, all that kind of stuff.
So Chris, on that USB side, what I normally do with that is I've got SI Impact when I do conferences, and I actually do a multi-track recording. And once the band and the sound check's finished, I actually let them go and do what they need to do. I pull down the actual main PA and I put the multi-track back into my desk. Then I listen on my headphones to set my actual recording mix for what I want to record, how I want to record things. And I put everything post-fade, which means if I hear that a backing vocal is too loud and I pull it back in my main mix, it will affect my mix going to my recording as well. So those are the sort of things that I'm doing. There's different ways of doing it. People doing it differently.
Look, again, it's an outcome-based thing. If I'm doing a thing for a client and my job is to track it, the last thing I'm going to do is do a post thing. We do a preamp gain structure and we put it through as clean as possible. If you're doing something in your context where you want to minimize your post workflow, in other words, if you don't have a lot of time to rework the material or to capture it in a way that is more useful immediately, post fade can work because the balance that you're getting here is maintained, especially when mics are swapping around and people are moving it around. You get a bit more constant. It's pretty much like guys in the studio. Some guys will record a microphone straight onto the door. Other guys will go through a preamp chain and record through that. It'll be subtle, but it'll be something, It's up to you. So there's no right way or wrong way unless it's on purpose.
So sometimes in a live stream environment where there's only one engineer that has to do the sound, the live stream, everything else, that might be a good thing for them to do a sound check and then listen to it with a multi-track and try and get your levels right, because some places you don't have the opportunity to have a console with split consoles and digital splits all over the place and then have a separate engineer to do a mix just for the live stream. So there's ways and means around it. So that's where we come in.
On that same note, I think there's a question from Katlego saying, do you recommend we use post-auxes? So a post-aux mix for broadcast, and let me just explain that quickly. I've done this in venues where we do VIP tents, even at festivals. So you've got a VIP tent over there, and it's pretty much a little bit more extended version than a matrix. So you would take auxiliary 8, or even 8, 10, and 11, or 10 and 9 and 10, which is a stereo pair, and set everything to 0, make a post fade, get your mix going. Your mix of front of house sounds great. You have someone go and listen over there and they say the reverb is a bit loud. Then you can go on the reverb channel and turn that post aux down a bit, slightly, and the kick drum needs to be a bit louder, or the guitar's a bit loud, soft, or whatever. And you make subtle changes on your post aux so that you can keep mixing, because remember that post aux feed at the moment, the way they're listening, is in context with your fader mix. So at latest point, when you move the reverb or move the guitar, it'll keep that context in your tent. So post aux is not a bad way of doing it.
Okay, I got a question from Richard. You busy reading that?
Yeah. So, look, I mean, different qualities and compression rates. We actually did, when we did the voice at one of the studios, we had the benefit of having a fiber line straight through to Mnet, but the fiber line could only carry 320 kilobits MP3s. But the guys were sending out a final mix. They were sending out, what's up from that? 128 kilobits MP3 for the MPEG-4 stream. But the guys were mastering, and they were the audio guys in the studio was trying to send out 320, thinking, let's just send the better one. And then they were being downgraded to 128. And then on the other side, they were backing it back up to 320. And it was sounding horrible, because if you understand how compression works, when you're already compressing 320 and then it gets reformatted down to 128, there's nothing to go back to. What you're doing is you're pixelating the 128. If you actually think about it from a picture's perspective, you're pixelating the 128 back up to 320 to give it a broader bandwidth, but the content is not there because you got rid of it on this side. So if you can stream at the same quality that your end user is going to be from the start, so that you have no scaling up or scaling down anywhere, that's the ideal. And then, like you said, you found that Listen to plugin that lets you do multiple formats out, as long as the ones where you're sending them are going to the right places, and me and Anton was talking about this offline. A lot of guys, when they do streaming, they get so worried about responding to comments from people that are listening and making comments about quality. You're not in control of their receiving end. If someone's sitting in an LTE zone or in a 3G zone where there's a interrupted or throttling happening or something, and what happens is your apps adapt. So your Facebook app will adapt, your YouTube app will adapt down to a bandwidth or a quality that can maintain continuity. So you'll see picture, and the first thing that goes will be sound, because they want to obviously keep the picture quality up, but there will be a downgrade, and that's just technology trying to, please the masses. So first thing, if anybody phones in and says, listen, your stream's sounding horrible, or quality-wise, or it's distorting, or anything like this, if you don't have the full information of what is the path on their side, it doesn't really help you, because this is where you react on your side. You either go louder or softer, but it's like, that would be, in my mind, if you've got a room of 5,000 people and one person comes and moans, and then the next one, and you're reacting to every single person, you're never going to get to a point. Having 100% of your audience happy is a miracle, if ever it happens one day. It's never happened before. It's not going to happen, whether it's a show, console, stream, whatever. But as long as you stick to the basics, so that your stream that you send out, that you can monitor on your side, and even with your stream provider, get a quality check, get quality control done, and then that if someone is down the chain, you can assist them with the problem on their side. You don't adapt the stream on your side.
But also go back to the question is, what's your end purpose? If you look at a church, the most important part is the actual message the pastor wants to deliver. So the question is, do you want to really stream 4K to the people out there? Because that's the questions I've been getting. How can we stream 4K? So most of the devices, if you look at any cell phone these days, 720, if you look at that on a small screen, will suffice. You really won't know the difference between a 720p.
My picture is 720. Your picture is less, I think. I think you're on 360.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Apple. Yeah, it's 360. Yeah, correct. So the question is, what's more important, the pastor's face? You can see all the pimples on his forehead, or do you want to hear what he's preaching the Sunday? So it goes back to context as well. So I'd rather go for a 480p standard definition image going out there with proper Apple lossless codec quality audio than have 720 or 1080 going out there and the audio gets degraded. So anything to me is important is the actual audio, because the thing is, right now, if Krista and I kill our video and you guys could not see us, but you could still follow us on audio, you'll still listen, because it's not that critical. But if you saw us and could not hear us, you'll switch off quickly because you lost the train of conversation.
Yeah, like now. There we go. I switched off the pictures.
So it's all gone. That's so no load shedding, guys. Promise, no load shedding. Yeah. We're back.
So Katlego asked a good question. Katlego asked, is there software that can be used to within your to match latency when doing a live stream? So obviously latency just to explain that quickly, is obviously just non-sync between either video images and even between video and audio. And yes, I mean, within your system, there's nothing more annoying than watching a Chinese movie when you see a mouth move and the voice is 10 seconds later or anything like that. At churches, even within the church, between the cameras and the projection, if someone does this and you see them and the screen is behind them and you see this and then you see it like half a second later, you know, remember there's only 25 frames per second on our format, you know, and every device that you have either converting to fiber or splitting or anything adds 1 to 2 frames of delay. So if you've got a source and you start doing a lot of intricate or makeshift, for the lack of a better word, distribution and conversion, you can be adding 15, 16 frames to your picture quality, but you don't realize it until you see it, because you're buying converters, you're buying boxes, you're plugging. But what you're doing is you're complicating the chain that's going. And then obviously on a broadcast scenario, we can easily just go and wait with the audio and catch up, you know, wait for the picture to delay it. But in a live scenario, I can't go and delay the audio in the auditorium to catch up with the screens, you know, because it's nothing more disconcerting than that when you're trying to talk and your voice is behind you. So I think on that question, there are software that will help you. Most consoles, even, like I was talking earlier, if you're sending a feed to a stream off of a matrix and there's a sync issue or latency issue, you can, on the matrix, put a plug-in or do a delay to match the audio. If there's latency issues and stuff between cameras, you know, again, the chances are that the direction your cameras are taking, in other words, a signal path, is where the problem comes. You've got one that's connected on a stand right here, HDMI plug-in. You've got another camera that's on the other side of the room going through converters all the way back to you. Okay, that's where the sync comes in. So if you've got higher-end cameras and they've got sync capabilities, the sync will pull them back in line. Old school, you know, running black and burst and those kind of things. But there are ways and means to capture this, and I'll let Anton take over from here, how your solutions will manage that.
Yeah, so obviously you can do it via software, but there's external hardware boxes. There you have little HDMI inline adapters. They call it little lip sync boxes. It's got preset dials on it, so you can actually try and lip sync it through that. So there's various ways of doing it, but ultimately the question is, how much latency have you added into the system by encoding, decoding, converting, compressing, then uncompressing, then converting it from HDMI to SDI, and then back again to USB and all those different things. So one thing we have to look at is the chain. How can we actually get that chain from the camera to the actual recording source as quick as possible without any interruptions, and then convert that back out to the projector or the LED screens or whatever's out there in the auditorium. So we have to do an audit on any system to see where we can reduce that, because I saw churches still running on VGA out there, composite video out there. Now, take a HDMI signal, 720p, compress that to composite video. It's not going to look that nice, but there's ways and means. So
yeah. And also, I mean, there's also, if you are aware of someone that's running a system where there is still VGA and those components in, you know, it's not about just taking everything and chucking it in the dustbin. You know, we're aware of budgetary concerns and all that. And if you have a plan of where your system needs to be or where you want to grow to have a longevity out of it, then you do an audit of what you have. You speak to someone like Anton, and you plan on what's first in line. And often the control aspect is the most important. Let's get a device in that's got control, flexibility to then cope with what is the infrastructure you want to run. And then from there on, your ripples get smaller going out, and at the end of the day, you've replaced everything. But you have a modular approach that can go out. Because if you don't change that, if you just go and buy state-of-the-art projectors now thinking your room's going to look better, or put in LEDs, LED screens, and your picture's going to look better, but you don't have control or you don't have the right source control, you know, people get frustrated. So there are, I mean, if you're fortunate enough where you've got budget just to do it all. But if you want to take a phased approach, have a plan. That's what I'm coming down to.
Yeah, on that plan as well, the thing is you need to make sure it's future-proof. It doesn't help you buy something right now and within 6-4 months it's out of date and you can't use that again. So ultimately, one thing I like to do is just look at what you have. How do you scale it up? How do you increase it? but also longevity. Life is very important on any product.
Yeah.
And like Krista said, it once again it goes back to what is your end criteria? What do you want to achieve? Because right now, I mean, you can have an Obi van, like Krista does Obi van mastering for The Voice or Idols or whatever. You don't want that in a church. You want something smaller. Is the speech important? Is the band important? Is both important? Is there lights? All those sort of things makes a big impact and decision on what you're going to do and how you're going to achieve it.
Yeah. So I think we're coming close to the end of our stream here. There's a question here which about PZM cameras. I think it's the second person asking about what recommendation on PZM cameras and all that kind. PZM, listen to me.
PZM microphone.
Yeah. PTZ cameras and optics and all that. I don't know if you want to answer that quickly.
So DZ, my contact details is in the actual conversation in the chat. So contact me offline. Let's take the discussion offline. I don't want to punt brands or talk brands on the actual conversation. To me, it's about the solutions right now. And we need to find out what you want to achieve. What currently you have? Do you have HDMI? Do you have SDI? Do you need USB? How far is the cameras away? Those sort of things. So let's have a proper conversation. And then we'll take it offline.
Yeah, and I think on that, obviously our theme tonight was strong in terms of church solutions and all that. And I think I'm available. You guys have all got my contact details. If you don't, it's about to appear in the Talkback Live. I don't know, my fingers are here. Watch, it's going to appear. 1, 2, 3. And then, but contact us and keep sending us discussion points. I mean, this whole discussion came out of people asking questions. And wanting to know more about solutions. But I mean, I spoke a lot about the audio side of things tonight, and obviously, like I said, the whole chain is important, and we can spend hours on every single segment, and it is important to do that, and that's my objective. I mean, I think the next stream I'm going to be doing is specifically looking at how to approach your mix and how to get a proper outcome in terms of your deliverable. We spoke a little bit about workflows the other night, but I'm gonna open myself up and do a whole talk just on mixing in different environments and different outcomes. So look out for the introduction on that. I want to say thank you to Anton for joining us. I think it was a great chat.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Apology again for calling you Anton van Wyk. I don't know where that came from.
Probably Darren. Darren calls me van Wyk, so let's blame it on Darren.
Yeah, let's blame it on Darren. But thank you guys for joining us. Look out for episode 6. Should be coming soon in the next couple of days. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Cheers, guys.
See you.
Bye.